And I could sell all my Bitcoin and own other things, but I don't. I'm making the decision every day at the margin to own Bitcoin. So every possible buyer asks, would I rather hold this or would I rather hold something else? Every current holder asks, would I rather keep this or would I rather buy something else? So nobody uniquely alone sets Bitcoin's value. The price is what is left over after these decisions that emerge from the marginal choices that we all make. You understand? So Bitcoin is only worth something because people value what it can do for them. Again, going back to the early slides in this deck, it is somehow satisfying a need that somebody has. And its scarcity is relevant and matters because the demand that people have for it cannot be satisfied just by making more Bitcoins.
When the market slows down and people start to wonder if the Bitcoin narrative has gone too far, investors frequently start by looking at the price of the cryptocurrency. However, Jack Mallers argues that concentrating just on price can obscure the more important topic of what initially makes Bitcoin valuable. To safeguard and increase their wealth, individuals have relied on dollars, government bonds, stocks, real estate, and gold for many years. However, governments, central banks, interest rates, and the overall financial system all have an impact on these assets. Bitcoin presents an entirely different model. According to Mallers, this becomes particularly crucial when governments continue to run significant deficits, debt levels increase, and traditional currency's purchasing power is threatened. He believes that Bitcoin is more than just another speculative asset. If you're intrigued by bold predictions and deep financial insights, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more engaging content. Thank you for your support and enjoy the video.
You can think of money as having these three jobs. It holds work you've done for later. So if you've worked and produced value, but you don't want to turn all that production into consumption, you're not hungry yet, you don't want to choose where to live for the next 20 years yet, you don't want to buy your vacation flight yet because you haven't talked about it with your fiance, then you need to hold the value over for a time being before you later exchange and consume from the market. Money also helps you move it across to someone. So holding it for later moves it across time. How do I take value that I created today and move it across a year, 2 years, a decade, 100 years? How do I store value today till the year 2126? Okay, you also need to move value across what we call space, distance. So how do I move value that I'm creating in Chicago to New York? How do I move it to London? And then the third, which is relevant to this episode, is money is used to compare unlike things. So how do I compare the value I'm creating at Strike to the value that's being sold at Whole Foods? The butcher that I'm buying my steak from has no fucking idea what Bitcoin elliptic curve cryptography is, and I have no idea what it's like to raise cows. So how do we create a marketplace that allows us to exchange this subjective value that different people are applying to the goods and services that we're creating for the market? And so again, you hear a lot of Bitcoiners talk about, well, money is about moving value across time or across space because that's what saving and exchanging is. But you also have to, now when it comes down to value, subjective value, you have to understand that money has a third job, which is moving value across choices, is what I have written here. Across these decisions. How do we subjectively value, I want all these things for myself, and we all want all these things. That is the human condition. That is what it means to be human. And you then have to make choices as to what things available to you in the market, because not everything is available to everybody. Some people can get planes and professional sports teams and hire all sorts of engineers, and some people can barely afford ramen noodles. So you could want all the things that you want, and then you have to look at the market and see what options are available to you and start making choices, and that is economizing. So now we get into Bitcoin. So hopefully that was very digestible, easy to understand. What is value? How does value emerge in an economy? Value is entirely subjective. It's not baked into the thing. Gold has no value inside of it that Bitcoin does or does not. Value is subjective, okay? So, what does Bitcoin serve? Okay, Bitcoin theoretically competes in the marketplace for money. So, it serves this idea of you do work and you spend your time doing stuff, and then you want money in return for that so that you can later consume, and you need purchasing power. And so let's take a look at this idea of a market for money. So again, value is all about us wanting something and then having to make a choice as to how to acquire what we want or how to work toward what we want. So let's take a look at what can go wrong with money. And this is a short list. I could have made this list 100 items long, but some of the things that can go wrong: someone can make more of the money that I save in, which would inflate. That's highly inflationary. It would debase my savings. So that's a problem. Someone can seize my money. So if I have to store my money in the possession and in the hands of someone else, they could just decide that my money is their money. That's a problem. It can be expensive for me to use my own money. So if it's on inefficient rails, if it's sitting in between a lot of intermediaries, then there's a lot of economic friction for me to use my money. Like it costs 2, 3, 4, 5, 10% just for me to use my own money. That's a problem. The rules of the money can change without my consent. So again, if it is with someone else or if it's in a system that I don't control or that doesn't respect me, then the rules can change. And then another one is that I can't verify any of it myself. That's a problem. Now, again, this list could have gone over and over and over and over again. But you start at a place where a human has wants. And I'll speak for myself. Now, I would assume that many humans share the same wants that I have when it comes to money, but I don't know that for certain because I'm not them. It's all subjective. But I'll just talk about myself. What do I want? I want a money that is fixed in supply. I want a money that is fairly reasonable for me to own myself so that I do not have to, if I don't want to, trust someone else to hold it for me without the threat of seizure. Even if it isn't the company that's going to seize it from me, maybe the government makes the company seize it from me. I want to be able to hold it myself. Okay, I want it to be fairly cheap and sometimes free for me to use, especially free for me to receive. I do not want to pay 2, 3, 4% to have to receive money and value to myself. I want to ensure with real credibility that nobody can change the rules. I want to be able to verify with math that every day I wake up, the rules, in fact, have not changed. Right? These are all things that I want. I want these things. So now I have to go about making a choice to acquire what I want in the marketplace. I can choose dollars. I can choose gold. I can choose pounds. I can choose real estate. Based on the properties that I want, this is what Bitcoin actually does. You can hold it yourself fairly reasonably. It costs you nothing. You do not need to pay a vault. You do not need to pay auditors. You can literally hold it yourself on your phone. It can move anywhere. Nobody can make more of it. Anyone can verify it. Nobody can control it. The rules, in fact, are fixed.
Essentially, people work today because they anticipate that the value of their labor will enable them to purchase products and services in the future. To put it another way, we need a means of preserving the value we produce throughout time. That is among the most significant functions of money. However, Bitcoin was created to address these issues in a different way. Its supply is restricted, cross-border transactions are possible, and its monetary regulations are integrated into the network itself rather than being managed by a single organization. In this way, Bitcoin isn't just attempting to become another digital asset. It is working to develop a currency that can function autonomously on a worldwide basis. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications for future Bitcoin, macroeconomic, and digital asset content before we go any further. Now, let's get into his powerful predictions.
So when we take a step deeper, we say, okay, Bitcoin's competing for this money thing. So what's it competing against? Cash, stocks, bonds, gold, real estate. So when someone says, how could Bitcoin possibly have any value? Well, you have to understand, people are making these decisions at the margins. Like we said, someone is waking up and saying, okay, I paid my phone bill, I bought my groceries, I paid my rent, I have leftover money, whether it's $1, $10, $1,000, $1 million, and I want to save that money. Here are the choices I have, again, because we want to have more purchasing power in the future. Let's go back. All of this starts from the human condition that we all want. We want a future, a better life. We have desires. And that is the amazing part about being human, is we're so future-oriented. We have an ability to lower our time preference. We have ability to prioritize the future. So what do I want? I want purchasing power in the future. Okay? What are my options to achieve that? Well, I can keep cash. I can invest in stocks. I could buy bonds. I could buy gold. I could buy real estate. Let's walk through each. Cash, no thanks. Because the amount that they're debasing it by printing more, my purchasing power is going to get entirely eroded. And inflation is a modern day crisis everywhere you go. Okay? Stocks, I'm taking counterparty risk on given companies. And by the way, stocks have not outperformed gold since the year 2000. So I do not want to take counterparty risk against leadership teams and products that I don't understand. And I also don't want to invest in an asset class that can't outperform, a metal. Bonds, I'm not even going to get into that. No, absolutely no thanks. Similar to cash. Gold. I don't want to store a bunch of gold in a vault in my house. I don't want to pay someone to store the gold for me. Gold has already been confiscated by the government. I don't know why it wouldn't be confiscated again. It's an analog metal. And I have no interest in trying to figure out how to sovereignly store a bunch of gold. In real estate, I do not want that counterparty risk. I don't want to have tenants. I don't want to have to pay property tax. I don't want to have risk of natural disaster. So I work through, and this is just me personally. Everyone makes their own subjective valuation. But me personally, I look at all my options and I say, okay, I want purchasing power in the future, because in the future, I might want a car. I might want a new house. I might want to buy the Chicago Bulls. I might want to fly private. I might want to have a nice dinner. I'm going to want a lot of things, and I need purchasing power in order to have the life that I want, or to protect myself from bad things happening. Inevitably, someone's going to get sick. Someone's going to have an accident. Someone's going to need something from me. I'm going to need purchasing power, or at least I want purchasing power. And I look at all my options and I say, okay, hey, Bitcoin is the one I elect to choose. So at the margin, I am assigning value. And people sometimes will think, what are you saying? Like Bitcoin's more valuable than water? Or Bitcoin's more valuable than... No, dude, that's not what I'm saying. In the same way that I'm not saying diamonds are more valuable than water. What I'm saying is I'm making a decision at the margins. I have money that I need to save. I created value. I have value left over. I paid the phone bill. I paid my YouTube TV bill. I paid my credit card bill. I paid my rent. I did all the things that I need to do, and I have some cash left over, and I want purchasing power in the future. So I have a decision to make, and this is the decision I'm making. That's it. That's how Bitcoin is valuable. And take yourself back to Silk Road. When someone says, I want to buy drugs on the internet. How do I do that? Well, they made a decision at the margin to say, well, I couldn't have used cash. I couldn't have used PayPal. I couldn't have used Venmo. I couldn't have used Cash App. So I used Bitcoin. Now, you could politically agree or disagree with the decisions they were making, but the point is they found Bitcoin useful. Therefore, there was demand for it. Therefore, it had value because there's more demand than there is existing supply. It is not like air. It is not plentiful. So, prices emerge from these marginal choices. Every possible buyer asks, would I rather hold this or something else? Every single day I wake up and I could sell all my Bitcoin and own other things, but I don't. I'm making the decision every day at the margin to own Bitcoin. So every possible buyer asks, would I rather hold this or would I rather hold something else? Every current holder asks, would I rather keep this or would I rather buy something else? So nobody uniquely alone sets Bitcoin's value. The price is what is left over after these decisions that emerge from the marginal choices that we all make. You understand? So Bitcoin is only worth something because people value what it can do for them. Again, going back to the early slides in this deck, it is somehow satisfying a need that somebody has. And its scarcity is relevant and matters because the demand that people have for it cannot be satisfied just by making more Bitcoins.
In the end, Jack Mallers' argument boils down to a straightforward notion. Bitcoin has value because people decide to value it. We frequently have some money left over after paying our bills, groceries, rent, and other daily obligations. This money can be saved for the future. We then have an option. We have the option of holding cash, purchasing stocks or bonds, making real estate investments, purchasing gold, or selecting Bitcoin. Everyone makes that decision for different reasons, according to Mallers. Cash, Real estate or gold may be preferred by some, whereas Bitcoin may be seen by others as a superior means of asset transfer and protection. The allure of Bitcoin stems from its scarcity, digital nature, worldwide accessibility, and lack of need for physical storage or traditional institutions to transfer it. For the same reason, Mallers argues that Bitcoin is not comparable to water or air. Although those items are necessary, they are not as rare. Since the quantity of Bitcoin is fixed, it cannot be readily expanded to satisfy demand if more individuals wish to purchase it. Every day, current holders choose whether to sell their Bitcoin for another asset or keep it, while buyers choose whether to hold Bitcoin or something else. The culmination of all those individual choices is the market price. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications if you thought his viewpoint was helpful so you don't miss any updates. We'd love to know what you think about the future of cryptocurrency markets, so please share your ideas in the comments section. We appreciate your time and hope to see you in the next video.